about how Mel Gibson got him to play Jesus in The Passion. Now keep this scripture in mind, and we're going to hear this clip.
You get word about that film?
I knew Mel Gibson was, but I did not know it was Steve McAvity, and that was his key producer. They invited me to a film. I think it was Tom Hanks and Mel Gibson were going to do this together. It was on Mavericks. We were talking about the movie. I didn't think the script was there yet. And then all of a sudden, Mel pivoted to something. And I said, oh my God. And I said, you want me to play Jesus, don't you? And he looked at me. He was smoking a cigarette. And he just, yeah, put his head down. 2 days later, he called me and he goes, hey, Jim, it's Mel. I said, Mel who? He goes, I don't know, Mel Brooks. Hey, he was smoking a cigarette and he goes, do you still want to play this Jesus guy? If you do, you may never work in this town again. We're all called to carry our cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it. He got really quiet on the phone. I said, I just realized my initials are JC and I'm 33 years old. And he goes, God, you're freaking me out. He hung up the phone.
How did you get?
Now, I don't like the fact that Mel Gibson did The Passion of the Christ, and he asked Jim Caviezel, do you want to still play this Jesus guy? Okay, I don't.
Called me and he goes, hey, Jim, it's Mel. I said, Mel who? He goes, I don't know, Mel Brooks. Hey, he was smoking a cigarette and he goes, do you still want to play this Jesus guy? If you do, you may. Invited me to a film. I think it was Tom Hanks and Mel Gibson we're all called to carry our cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it. He got really quiet on the phone. I said, I just realized my initials are JC and I'm 33 years old.
Now, this is where the video's going to get good. Sound of Freedom, funded by Clinton Foundation, linked money. You know what they're supposed to be fighting. Now watch this, okay?
Sound of Freedom, that hole just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So to all the truthers that are in denial and choose not to even entertain this topic, to all the lazy people not even willing to even look at the information presented, you stay over there, you sit on the fence, you do what you need to. Let other people continue digging, because when you dig, all you need to see then is who funded this film. Tim Ballard says one name, Carlos Slim.
Who's paying for this movie to come about?
I think Jim's. Aren't you footing the bill?
Now, I want y'all to see how nervous they get when they're asked who is funding this movie. Let me back up.
Who's paying for this movie to come about?
I think Jim's. Aren't you footing the bill? A great group of people have come together to invest in this production. Some of them, the Carlos Slim family is involved.
Really?
From Mexico. JP, John Paul DeJoria.
Fox has helped distributing it.
Really?
Yeah, Fox, Century Fox.
And for the folks who don't know who Carlos Slim is, tell them who he is.
He's one of the wealthiest men in the world.
They are really, really bad people. The largest shareholder in the Times is Carlos Slim. Now, Carlos Slim, as you know, comes from Mexico. He's given many millions of dollars to the Clintons and their initiatives. So Carlos Slim, largest owner of the paper from Mexico. Reporters at the New York Times, they're not journalists. They're corporate lobbyists for Carlos Slim and for Hillary Clinton. We're going to let foreign corporations and their CEOs decide the outcomes of you just can't do this. We can't let this happen. We are not going to let it happen where they decide the outcome of our elections. They can't do it, and we're not going to let it happen.
If you look.
Okay, now y'all keep that in mind. So it appears that Trump does not like Carlos Slim, okay? So make your little note, Trump don't like Carlos Slim. And we're going to come back around to it. Let's keep going.
Into Carlos Slim, because that's all it takes, just a little look in, comes back to the Clinton Foundation. In fact, he donated millions to him, one of the biggest donors to the Clintons. So the funder of this film that Tim Ballard knows quite well is coming back to the Clinton Foundation. Just a coincidence, they say. Come on, people. Let's start awakening to this darkness, because it is. People just sit on the fence. They don't want to know. Get your wallet out. I've said it many times now. That's not helping. What's not helping, though, is then coming after people that are doing their work and then making all these suggestions as well. It's stupid because we want the truth. So Carlos Slim, if you look at also Frank Gustra, who was in the same meeting with the Clinton and Carlos Slim, he's linked with Pizzagate. He was in the emails. This was his company's logo too. We've seen that before. People, we have to start being open that we've been lied to on every aspect. It's just the fact now it's getting darker and darker with people that we assume are good. And that's why it's so hard to take. Yet this is the Great Awakening. That's how evil works. They blend within the shadows. We've been told that many times. Now we've brought them out into light. Now they're panicking. But now the darkness is coming out within us because the cognitive dissonance kicks in. Now it means something because no, it can't be. This is the world that I've looked. Unfortunately, it is. Yeah, if we keep going to endgame, we've won this war. We're in full control. The world's going to change completely, but we have to go through this. We have to see it all. Pay attention now.
Unfortunately, this guy claims it's the Great Awakening. The golden era of the internet has long since passed. It's been dead and gone for over half a decade, if not longer. Back to point. Carlos Slim. He's most notably associated with trafficking drugs and humans. If you look into it. Also take to heart that Trump recently promoted The Sound of Freedom. They had a little screening with Jim Cavell. But Trump is also on record for stating that Carlos Slim is a bag of fucking shit. I'm paraphrasing. So which is it? Yeah, to think for you, both of these assholes work for our masters. Look up the Title of Nobility Act. It clearly states that presidents aren't allowed to hold official titles, which is probably why Trump's mentally deficient son is named Baron. And all quote-unquote presidents are stewards of a vassal colony, a crown colony under the crown relating to the top of the trilateral city-states, having to do with a banking central, below which is social control, otherwise known as Catholicism, having to do with religion. And below that is the military might, having to do with the District of Columbia, having to do with the military-industrial complex. Now, what you also want to look up is, it's called Bill 1409. Bill 1409. Let's just see if this will work. Bill 1409. 15 minutes later. It still brought it up. The uppermost. Familiarize yourself with that. Ironically, coincidentally as it were, it was released in May of the same year as The Sound of Freedom. Let's do this too. Release date, God is a Bullet. Oh, look at that. It came out a month prior to The Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom release date. Oh, look at that. CHIP, Massachusetts, Freemasons. Free. You ever heard about this? The CHIP program? Specifically having to do with the Massachusetts chapter of Freemasonry. And it just so happens to be free. Just something to think about. Yeah. The proceeds or the earnings of The Sound of Freedom, 10 to 1, are financing human trafficking. A lot of people will balk at that, and yet the proceeds or earnings from most, if not all, Hollywood/entertainment finance these things. You and I alike have been supporting this shit for decades, depending on your age, of course. This includes, but is not limited to, NFL, NHL, NBA. You can do it, Google. And all the other fucking, 3-digit alphabetical, this, that, and the other things. Yeah. What else? There's a bunch of shit I've been rattling off and trying to get through to duds, but most people don't want to look into it. They want to buy into it. They want to pretend that they're doing the right thing by shopping around superficial horse shit. And some of the same kids, I already said this in another video, who are boasting about how amazing Sound of Freedom is because they're on the awareness wagon. They're not thinking for themselves. They're not putting in any time to figure shit out, but they're on the awareness wagon. They also went to go see that Barbie programming having to do with eugenics, and they were okay with the fact that it's sexualizing children. Keep in mind, that's why the Barbie doll was created in the first place. The irony is it doesn't have genitalia. If you suffer through that Hollywood slop on the big screen, the end of it is capped off with Barbie getting genitalia and rattling off that she's at the gynecologist. The beginning of the movie starts off with a bunch of dudes talking about beating each other off, but instead of saying beating, they say beaching. I'll beat you off. Oh no, you'll beat me off. Blah, blah, blah. I posted audio clips online. Nobody fucking cares. Yeah. Usually I say welcome to Logic Land, assholes, but people aren't invested, which means they're not involved. This is why things are bad and exponentially getting worse. These are superficial fucking things. Our masters have been eating, fucking, molesting, etc., and trading children since ancient Egypt, if not Sumer. I shit you not. And every single fucking Christmas during Saturnalia, we symbolically celebrate our masters doing what I just rattled off. Eating, molesting, fucking, trading children. But as always, what the fuck do I know? Right, I almost forgot. Tim Ballard recently, within about a week's time now, approximately, he stepped down from the quote-unquote railroad. In many ways, it appeared that he was kicked out of the railroad. That's neither here nor there. What matters is Tim Ballard and the railroad are both under investigation, and that's worth looking into. Because we've all been had, and most people are too fucking gullible, so they'll buy into things instead of looking into things because they're also equally lazy. On the subject of being too fucking lazy, Mel Gibson has hung out with Peter Nygard, among other dastardly fucking people. Remember, he works for our masters. These people are puppets. In the video I just posted, Tom Hanks is also mentioned, who likely hung out on Epstein's Island. Also remember, Epstein had a ranch called the Zorro Ranch, very close to where I grew up, between Albuquerque and New Mexico, or Albuquerque and Santa Fe, pardon me. And that doesn't come up for some reason. It's also been on the market for a while, and they've been having a lot of trouble selling that site because the energy there is corrupted, and then some, based on the practices that our masters got up to. Yeah, but Peter Nygard, Nygard, if I'm not mistaken, known pedophile, hung out with Mel Gibson. Food for thought.